Welcome to another edition of Voices of Pueblo podcast. I'm Gregory Howell, and I'm very excited today because we're going to be featuring one of the stories on our cover of our August issue, which is Fired Up. And it's Pueblo Zoo builds future leaders with curiosity and care. And this is an article that the Pueblo Star-Journal wrote in cooperation with the zoo as we were learning more about what the zoo really does throughout the year. And we oftentimes just think of the zoo and we immediately think of animals, but it really is so much about our youth and our young leaders and education. And so the article really does look at what the zoo does all throughout the year and how it really fills those gaps, because D60 and D70 and a lot of our online academies and homeschoolers, you know, there are a lot of gaps there. And the zoo is one of those very unique places because it's a destination. It's safe. It's so rooted in the history and the culture and the legacy of not just Pueblo, but of zoos around the world. So it is this place for discovery. And it's really wonderful when you have this safe space, because you never know when a child or a young adult is going to all of a sudden have that moment where things become really clear and they'll say, oh, I was at the zoo one day and I just realized that this is what I want to do for my future. So I'm really excited because I have the executive director, Abbie Krause, with me today. And Abbie, why don't we just start with an introduction and telling us a little bit about how you arrived at the zoo and how long you've been there, and then we'll get into the meat of the story.
Thanks, Gregory. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Well, my husband is a native Puebloan. He's been here for 4 generations since the 1800s, and yes, he went to Centennial High School.
I was going to say, which high school did he graduate from?
And I discovered Pueblo, and when I met him, we met in Denver, and he brought me back because his family's rooted here, and we moved here. I'm from a similar. We say that we grew up in the same town, a country away. I'm from Ohio originally,
right?
And it's a very same demographic. It was a car town, a Ford town, like here's a steel town, and so I felt very comfortable here. But one thing that really shocked me and struck me is that Pueblo had so much more vision and thought to the future, and so many more cultural institutions. So one of my first visits was to the zoo with my future in-laws.
So your husband now, that was on the itinerary. You were going to the zoo.
Yes. Well, he used to work for the zoo too.
Oh my gosh. And, so there's a backstory to it
My father-in-law was one of the primary vets, Dr. Krause. And so we went with him because they were very proud of the zoo. And I was just so impressed that Pueblo had a zoo, because nothing like that existed in my small town. Right. And also how close we could get, and the experience that you could, the immediate thing I thought of was up close and personal.
Right. Because
you could get very close views, and it was a small zoo, so people would talk to you, the keepers would talk to you and give you information, and it just felt so intimate and special. Also, he was in a wheelchair and I had a toddler. It was very easy to navigate.
Okay.
So that was my introduction before I even dreamed that I would work at the zoo. And then when we decided to move here, I put my hat in the ring and I became the marketing director.
Wow.
And a couple years later.
So you worked your way in at a certain level.
Yeah.
And then you started on that journey of sharing the zoo story.
Well, my background has been in marketing, and I did go to grad school for nonprofit management. So then when the directorship came up, I was like, well, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for that. And lo and behold, I've been the director for 10 years now.
So when you entered at that marketing level, what were some of the things that you were really excited about? Because clearly you had this very personal introduction, someone who's a multi-generational Puebloan, and the zoo is on their list of things of must see. Yeah. What were some of the things that you noticed right away that entering the zoo at the marketing level? Well,
that up close and personal.
Okay.
I tried to look at what do we offer that maybe, there's a couple other, there's Cheyenne Mountain Zoo and Denver Zoo, but we really are different animals, if I can use a pun.
Sure.
But we're very affordable. We're very navigable. It's good for older people and younger people, and it's very safe. And I just thought, this is an oasis in the middle of this town, and it really adds to the things that you can do. But Then we'll get into education. That was the next thing.
Right.
I learned a lot about zoos and what they're about. And traditionally, people thought of it as entertainment, a menagerie, if you will. But really, over time, zoos became more about conservation. One of the things that we were talking about at that time was really zoos. If you don't know, we're part of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. We're accredited,
which is a big
by
deal.
them.
Accreditation is a huge in that industry.
It is a huge deal, and it means that we are upholding standards on all levels: safety, education, animal welfare, etc. And that's really where things began to change. You've heard of people that oppose zoos, and for good reasons.
Right.
In the past, they really needed some work, and that's kind of where the turning point came, and we became much more cognizant of why are we here and how do we take care of animals.
Right.
And the zoos, if you don't know this, the attendance to zoos annually combined is more than all professional sports.
Wow.
In the United States. So that really is a powerful
that says a lot
voice
about the destination.
Yep.
And
it also says it has powerful impact in our voice. And zoos realize we really need to be using our voice for what we really need to is conservation.
Yes.
If we're not here for conservation, what are we here for?
Right.
And so that's kind of what struck me is zoos really started to mobilize to do good work.
Right.
If you look out in the wild is not a safe place to be for animals.
And I noticed that when I went to the San Diego Wild Animal Park when it just opened, I remembered that was such a unique, different experience because it was just wide open. And you were on this train taking you through these wide open spaces as if you were in Africa or somewhere else where you would go on an animal viewing safari. So it was really interesting because the tone, the lens, the perspective had shifted quite a bit with these huge open spaces where you then, you basically, the animals got to roam free. We were the ones that were caged up in the transportation.
Right. But the goal is also, we are the caretakers of the wild at this point. Unfortunately, that's where things are going. And zoos are doing a lot of research, a lot of conservation efforts out in the field. And more importantly, we've been supporting some of these conservation efforts out in the wild. But what are we doing at home? And that's what you're getting at, Gregory, with this article about education.
Right.
Our mission, our foundation is our community. And our partnerships with the community. Our mission ultimately is conservation.
Right.
And how do we do that? We do it through people. People are the ones that are affecting the wild.
Right.
So we need to be able to affect the wild in a positive way.
And
how do we do that?
Right at our backdrop. The wild used to be kind of at a distance.
Right.
And now look at just what's happening in our environments and how animals are having to come in closer and closer. What was the wild open areas is now right in our backyard.
Well, and look at pollinators. Pollinators are in danger, and that affects our livelihood.
That's right.
But what is that bridge between our community and our mission? It's education.
Right.
It's the kids.
Right. And you mentioned in our article, we started out because right now you were enrolling. Has it started the first program that we highlighted? This is the first one for the school, which, You see these programs listed, in on the website or when you're at the museum, but until you start looking at the individual programming, what actually happens, and some of these are really, they're intense. I mean, it's great because, it's not like you just arrive and then you go for a little walk and you see a few animals. I mean, the kids are really getting engaged in, focused, walks and talks, and it's all connected. And just to be able to experience that. And for many, it may be the very first time that they've actually been at a zoo or a place where all of a sudden, it's structured differently. There's different things at a zoo than maybe at another, attraction that we might have in the city. But, what I discovered in looking at just that mission, again, getting back to, we think it's all about animals, but it's so much about the kids. You have so many programs all year long, and they're not just exclusively for kids. But, D60, D70, all of our other different types of schools, those, they can't cover everything. They can't do everything. And you're talking about something that's very experiential. I think, in terms of really how you get the students engaged. So, but also you're creating a place for critical thinking, which is oftentimes one of the things that we always wish there was more of, but it seems to be not at the top of the list in some situations. But I think the way that you've structured, a lot of these programs, it's just built into the experience that you've got these trained educational, staff who really do know the animals. They really do know education and what learning is all about, because that's a whole other thing. You just don't go and start teaching. You really need to know the subject matter. You need to know your audiences. You need to know the environment. You need to know the whole thing in order to really be smart when you start getting those really good questions from children, which are usually better than any other question that you're going to get. So that's what surprised me, though, was just the depth of all of the programming.
And I think with many things, you need to meet people where they are.
Yes.
And so that's why we do have a large range of, if you talk to any Puebloan that grew up here, almost every Pueblo student has been to the zoo for a field trip.
Right.
So that's the very first,
Sure.
kind of touch point. And that's the fun, let it.
You remember
out,
that
schools
one.
out, let
Yeah,
the monkeys
yeah.
out. That kind
Exactly.
of, everybody likes to come and have a good time. But then it goes deeper than that.
Right.
Like you said, there are some holes in curriculum, and we've been for decades. We've gone out to the schools, and we've taken our docents, our dedicated volunteer docents, have gone out to the zoos and provided programming with our education team, and then you get them out to the zoo. I'm just layering. There's
Right.
there's the very easy entry, and then there's deeper experiences.
Sure.
Our preschool program, for example, is a program that lasts a semester long, and the parents come and do one program and the kids do the other, so that the parents can support them in their learning. And
Wow.
we're teaching those parents how to
Right.
support them.
Which, of course, there's never a school for being a parent. You just have to.
Right,
I mean, you may have
exactly.
some mentors or some, people in the family that you aspire to be like.
When we say parents, but they're some of them are just caregivers as well.
Exactly, yeah.
So then we've got the zoo school, and there's a whole different level. And you're trying. The zoo school started out with.
When did that actually start? The zoo school.
Well, we started it 3 years ago, and we're part of a larger program. BOCES is some state funding that comes through for homeschoolers. So the homeschoolers have
Right.
some funding, and we can use it for things like zoo school. So they came for zoo school, and it became so popular that immersion, that
Right.
the semester long and the year long programming
Right.
each week, we wanted to open it up for others public schools. So we
Sure.
moved the zoo school to Thursday because they
And
can
what was
come
that
any
like?
day.
What was the response when all of us? Because you were saying earlier, it was a really big deal to go on a field trip, but now you've got something more,
Right.
detailed, intense. It's a longer. What was the response from the schools as far as providing this?
Oh, it's been very popular. The homeschoolers love it, and now the parents of public schools or
Sure,
other
sure,
schools,
yeah.
we're doing it on Friday when they don't have
When they don't have
programming.
school, yeah, that's smart.
And they're coming in doing that, even
That's
if it's self-pay, they
Right.
think it's worth
Right.
it.
Well, and I learned a lot about homeschoolers. I've been learning a lot about them when you start talking about the ecosystem, what's available. Because I had an art gallery before. Man, there were these groups of parents that would get together and they would call me, and I would get the artist involved, and we would put together a whole program. It's a lot about leadership. But 4-H, we just did a huge podcast, 6 young 4-H. I mean, the way that is integrated and the way in which you're able to have these real tactile experiences, because a lot of that's been removed. I mean, I remember going to school and we had home ec, we had shop, we had all these really great classes that were so different from your traditional math and English and science and history. You were making things, and that's a very powerful touch point.
Yes, and that's where you're getting at. You're meeting people where they are. We have different learning styles. We have different activity styles, of different attention spans, and this really helps with getting to kids where they are. Like you mentioned, there are some holes. Science is really, there's not a lot of science in schools. In some cases, unfortunately, we're the only science they get sometimes.
Yeah. And people forget that because you have all of the sciences. And,
Right.
across all studies.
We're doing modules in hydroponics, for example, pollinators, coats and colors, adaptations. Those are the kinds of things we're learning, and you're not just learning it from a book. You're going out and seeing it, and then you get to reflect on it, and then you get to play a little bit and get the wiggles out.
Right, and play is so important. Kids adults too, they need to play. But I wanted to, recently you just, this week actually, you were at City Council, the work session, which is part of your annual kind of tradition. You have to report to City Council. But let's just let our listeners know a little bit more about what is the structure. I mean, who owns the zoo? I mean, and you are an employee of the zoo. Are you a city employee? I mean, let's let our listeners know what is the structure of the zoo, because I've heard a lot of different little stories, and Pueblo is not like every other city, and every city is unique in that way.
Well, the zoos often were part of the parks department of a city. It was an amenity, and that's the way we started in the 30s. A lot of our structures were built by the WPA and
City
CCC.
Park
It's
is
gorgeous.
Just, it's a memorial to all those great things.
Yes, it's amazing, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Right, definitely.
So we'll do that another time. But what they found is over time is it was very difficult for cities to run zoos. It's not their bailiwick. It's not their profession. Parks people that are taking care of facilities. Right. They don't.
They just want to open and close the gates. That's
and
all.
that profession is taking care of animals and their well-being. Really needed much more focus, and that's when things started to switch over. A lot of the models, and every zoo is a little bit different. And we happen to be one that's very common. Is the city retained ownership of the buildings and the grounds and the facilities, and the operations were switched over to the nonprofit, the Zoological Society, which was formed in 1991. And so we have contracted with the city. It's their asset that they own, and we run it. What that's done is it's allowed the city to do what they do best.
Sure,
and and people that do
and that's a huge asset too, for the city.
Exactly.
It's a line item on the
we'll
budget.
Get in there. Yeah, we'll get into that. But then we are running it for. We specialize in animals and their care, also zoo operations. So we've been able to specialize that and run it more efficiently and to the betterment of the zoo.
Yeah.
So that's how we're structured. I am an employee of the Zoological Society. We are not city employees, but we do rely on the city.
Sure.
A third of our funding comes from government. And another.
When you say government.
So in our case, we primarily get city funds and county funds. Not so much federal funds. And not so much state funds. So for us, government means city and county.
And that's typical, you would say, when you start looking at the general model of where zoos are in this 501c3 nonprofit kind of structure.
Right.
The city retains the assets which have been there for quite some time.
And usually that involves maintenance.
Right, exactly. It's usually the first thing that all cities always ask, who's going to maintain this afterwards, which is usually a big problem. So you have an agreement, and then you report. So this week you actually gave a report, and people can see this. It'll be on the Pueblo Star-Journal YouTube channel, but you go to City Hall for the City of Pueblo, and you can look at these recordings, and they'll have the agenda and everything. But what took place at this particular presentation? What were you sharing with the City of Pueblo?
So we do, as you mentioned, an annual report because we want to make sure that they understand what's happening with our zoo, the city zoo. And this year we always report on what's happening with the new stuff. And this year we really focused on budget's a big thing this year.
Yes.
We also wanted to focus on the value that the zoo gives back to the city and its citizens. And the funding is a huge deal this year. So we wanted to be transparent because we want to make sure that people understand what it takes to run a zoo. It's we can't take it for granted.
That's right.
I mean,
which most people do. I mean, usually there's something that's problematic when we all start talking about the zoo, and people are like, what do you mean? The zoos are here forever, but that's not the case. They're not.
It takes a lot of people working very hard, a lot of dedication. And I'm standing on the shoulders of some people that laid that foundation.
Yes, that's right.
So I want to say that these people that started, that switched over to 1991 were really visionary and really worked very hard. People don't have a lot of personal lives when this.
No, and if you think about it historically, you know, when the steel mill was, I mean, all of that unemployment and everything in the 70s and the 80s, and it wasn't until the 90s, you know, when projects like the river, you know, all these economic development, I mean, that's when a lot of shift happened. A lot of people were looking at things differently. So it makes a lot of sense because that was a big time for nonprofits. You know, we had the Arts Center, you know, all those things in the 70s and the 80s. So you could see that change happening where there were better ways to manage certain facilities or, you know, structures that are under the city's portfolio.
So my job at these annual reports are to make sure that people understand and get a feeling, know the transparency, that we're being transparent about what's happening in the budget, also that they understand about the zoo, because over time people forget or they just don't know. So I just want to make sure that they know all the great things that are happening, but also that it's a very fragile thing, that the future is not guaranteed. We hope that it is an asset that people value and the government values and the citizens value, so that we can continue into the future. I had mentioned that a third of the funding comes from the city and the county, and the other 2/3 are through the zoo. Primarily is the engine to help with that, but we get a third of that is earned revenue, like the admission, being a member. Then the other third is fundraising. So it's our relationships with donors. It's our ability to write grants and receive grants. So those 2/3 are really what we are, the revenue generators. So we just want to make sure that people understand what we've done and where we're going and what our challenges are. A lot of the challenges, labor. It takes people to take care of these animals. 63% of our expenses is payroll, and we need to pay our people well, and they're drastically underpaid. I have the numbers we're in the bottom quartile of pay,
and sadly that's a problem. That's not uniquely the zoo.
Exactly,
that's a problem in the nonprofit and Pueblo.
Right. So we just need to make sure that we understand where that money's going, that it's being responsibly spent. It's being spent on the care of the animals, the food for the animals, and their veterinary care. So
you forget that they need health care.
Yes.
I mean, they live at the zoo. I mean, these are animals that have been living there for decades.
And that can be expensive, and that can be unpredictable.
Yeah.
I have a fabulous team, and we do everything we can to keep costs down. But that you can only, go so long on bubble gum and duct tape, and you have to invest in the zoo. And we've done that. And it really, when you're investing in the zoo, it's a better place, it's a better experience, and it's better care for the animals.
Is there like a health insurance program, like for your dog or cat, you can buy pet insurance? Is there one designed for zoos where you can get a bulk, like physician, single pay? It'd be so easy to run them through, run them through
I don't know if anybody's going to underwrite some of that, but that doesn't exist.
So when you were doing the presentation, what were some of the things that came up, or was there any, what was the topic of conversation, because this was your regular, but did you learn anything? Were there other things that people shared with you about the zoo? Because you gave a full report, and then you've got some great, which we're going to get into, talking about the impact and how people can actually support the zoo, because it's more than just buying a ticket and coming and seeing the animal with your friends and family. There's so much other stuff that I think a lot of people just don't even know is available.
What I want to really point out also is that we do give back to the community. Someone used the term recently, we're a net giver.
And I know they do those economic impact reports, and every year they will tell you for every dollar, or they'll show for this amount, we have put this back into the community.
Yes, we collaborated with the CSU's Healy Fellows for the Hassan School of Business with Dr. Mike Wakefield, and we did our impact study, and several nonprofits in town did that, and you'll be hearing more about that with a campaign called the Nonprofit Effect.
Okay, great.
So stay tuned for that.
Because they're multiplier effects in a lot of cases.
And the results that came back for us, that on a $3 million budget, The zoo contributes back $20 million annually.
See, and it's really hard to understand that, but when you start looking at that multiplier effect and the layers that are involved, how that gets filtered through.
And that's direct and indirect. Direct and indirect.
Yeah.
So it's employment.
Yes.
It's tourism. It's purchasing. It's all of these things that trickle into the economy.
Right. And you're just one of many that are basically putting that back into the community. If you're being a really good mission-oriented 501c3 that is really staying on mission.
50% of our population comes from outside, or our visitorship comes from outside Pueblo County.
I was going to ask you what the attendance, 50%.
Yep, and we've got a huge following of the 8 states that are around us. Texas is a big one. People will come and travel from Texas to spend money on our behind the scenes.
Yes.
Pandas are very popular.
Oh my God.
And they'll spend money while they're here. But it's 50% of our population is outside
When you just mentioned that someone from Colorado Springs saw the article and said, I need to go down to Pueblo. I mean, that is just when you hear that, you must feel really.
And like I said, the other, Cheyenne Mountain Zoo is a great zoo, but people do like to come to our zoo for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's more affordable. It's more intimate. And I've had people come and say, we love to come down here because our kids can walk and we can see them.
They can be free.
And
like
they can be
animals.
free. Exactly. So yeah, we love that. And he said, I've been here before. I love it. And I just wanted to support the zoo.
Isn't that great when someone just takes the time, they find something that really connects with them and they act on that. Because see, that's the other big thing. There's a lot of talk. We're all taught now. Don't worry about what they say. Watch what they do. It's how are people actually following through on that commitment? Because that's just one person, but there's others, and it's
people.
That's
so
great.
many people, and people don't. I just encourage. There's all kinds of levels that you can get involved if you're at that part.
Right.
But from accessibility at the very lowest level, the very simplest, I shouldn't say lowest because it's so important.
Right.
But a very simple thing to do is just attend, come.
Yeah.
If you're a member, come often.
Yeah.
Ask another family to become a member. Bring somebody that's in from out of town. All those are very low entry types of things you can do. And then you're having fun at the same time.
Yeah. And plus you can literally, if you just stay in City Park, you could go for weeks, filling in things to do just at City Park.
Exactly.
Especially now with the Waterworks Park, you just go further down, you're on the water. I mean, you've got the Frisbee golf, you've got the pools, you've got everything there that was all part of that original vision, especially when we had Rockefellers and Guggenheims who were empire builders and they wanted to have really nice parks and gardens like they had in Europe and in other countries. And that's just what happens when you get people like that to run businesses and settle, in a community like Pueblo, which there wasn't. I mean, when you look historically at what was here, water was here, and basically just the natural terrain. But, a lot of this, this was culture that was brought in, at a time when, this town was booming, with steel and other, industries.
Well, and you're hitting on a point of what keeps people here, what attracts people. And this is one of the things that makes life a better quality of life. Some people go once a year, some people go once every couple of years, some people come every week. And for some reason, for some people, this is why they came. We're attracting businesses, we're trying to attract doctors, we're trying to attract people to come and live and work. And the zoo is one of those places. I've had people come up to me and said, you know what, I was considering taking this job. I Googled Pueblo and I realized they had a zoo. Wow. And I thought, well, this has got to be a great place if they've got a place like the zoo.
No, and then before you even do any research and then you start digging into the zoo itself, you realize that it has a legendary history, which again, we're going to need to do a separate podcast. But one of the things that came out of your presentation at the work session was this Our Impact Pueblo Zoo. And you break it down by education, economic, cultural, and then you show this path about how, what could happen, and again, this isn't uniquely Pueblo. These are struggles that are facing a lot of similar institutions in other parts of the United States and overseas. But the most important thing is, we talk about extinct animals. Can you imagine if the zoo was extinct? I mean, what happens at that point? Then And this is what really bothers me. And I think it's why it's so important that we're doing the podcast, we're doing the article, and you did your presentation, and we're continuing to have the conversation, is it's really hard to do things when all of a sudden decisions have been made, things have crashed and burned for whatever reason. It's really hard. It's great when people are shared, they get the information, you do it annually, but people who really care, they're always going to care. But there are all these other people, like you said, they may have come once in school when they did their field trip. Others might come, for other reasons throughout the year. They have kids and they start bringing the kids. But, for people to want to come back and to see it, you've kind of given a lot of different pathways, how people, I like to say, who can experience the zoo again for the very first time. Because that's something that you've done very, very well. Because sometimes you don't think, oh, that's at the zoo. What do you mean?
And a lot of people think that the zoo is for kids.
Right.
And it is. It really is. But it's also for anybody that likes to enjoy nature, that likes to observe animals, that likes to go and have their lunch in a peaceful spot and watch the pandas for an hour.
And watch people watching
and
animals.
watch the peoples watching animals. But and a lot of people say, I haven't been to the zoo in years. And people who have been say, it's not the zoo of my youth. It's really
and
changed.
that comes up a lot, because I can remember even when I was really young, we had these animal compounds or preserves, because I was born in Southern California. So we had a lot of entertainment. Hollywood, all the trainers had Jungle Land in my hometown in Thousand Oaks, which was right outside of Los Angeles and Hollywood. And that's where all the great trainers would do all of their work with these wild animals. And it was only open for about a year or two, and then it did shut down because of all the changes. The movie industry is notorious for...
and we've evolved a lot.
Yes,
since
we have.
then.
We have. and humanity has evolved too.
And all of the training and the care that we do for the animals is also for the benefit of the animals. We do a lot of research about what would preserve them in the wild.
Yeah.
We are working, the zoos are maintaining genetic diversity, because unfortunately... we may have to reintroduce it into the wild someday. We've had to do it with the condor. They've been successful with it. We've at the zoo. One of the things I presented at the city council is an example of how even small zoo in Pueblo can make an impact. We just received 4 Rodriguez Island bats.
Wow!
To add to our collection, we had 2 left, and we had 4 females that came, and we have now 4 babies. They were all were thriving, and our trainer, our keeper, was doing a lot of training with them, and that made them thrive. They were happy and eating and breeding, and now we have 4. This population dropped to 70 in the wild.
Wow.
It's now on its way up, but can you imagine 4 in a population? That's a big impact. So that, keeping the diversity and keeping that population up and learning about them and what their issues are in the wild, and raising that. Also we're raising that story to people, and they're realizing, wow, I didn't realize that. And the kids, we're back to the kids, Gregory.
Because
the kids will teach their parents.
Yes.
They're the leaders. They're the ones. I love it when I hear a kid come and say that they lead their parents and their grandparents around saying, this is my zoo. Let me show you this.
I'm going to show you this.
They just went to this program at school, and Mom, look at this.
You've
and
empowered these young
them.
They're
so
like
beautiful.
Young leaders. They're empowered.
Well, and we've had a lot of kids that have grown up zoo. That's one of my favorite stories. They may start in a preschool, then they go to summer camp, and then they become one of our ZooALIVE teen ambassadors. We've had several.
Like a church, when you think about the zoo, it's like church.
And then they work in the cafe, and then they work in the gate, and then they go to college, and then they become a teacher, one of our summer teachers while they're going to college, and then they're in a career. I've been there long enough to see this process happen a couple of times. I'm so proud of the kids that are out there making a difference in biology and wildlife, in science, in teaching, in veterinary medicine. And we've got kids that they also didn't think that they could do it. They're very shy. Some kids are very shy. And finding these different ways. Sammy is one of our ZooALivers that's going to high school. She's got half her school credits, going to major in wildlife biology, got the Boys and Girls Club Leadership of the Year award. And she says to me, I'm not all that good with people, but I love animals. And so through the animals, I learned to build my confidence.
Yeah.
And that confidence has led her to where she's going right now.
Yeah, you see that in 4-H where these really shy kids are given an animal, and they raise them, they show, it's pretty powerful when you start to see that unique human being coming out of that
you see their
shell.
eyes light
Yeah.
up. They couldn't say boo to somebody
Yes.
before, but you put them with an animal and they will talk somebody's ear off telling them all about these things. And our guests are flabbergasted.
And then when they go out into the world, they're sharing their Pueblo experience. Yes, I started at our local zoo in Pueblo, and they're off at school and people are, Pueblo has a zoo. It's that same, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we look at all of the programs, because we started, you've got a school without walls, which we call the Zoo School. And these meet weekly on your 25-acre campus. And the students are grouped by grade level. So kindergarten through 8th grade. And class sizes are intentionally small, limited to 18 students per session. God, and the school district can't get anywhere near that ratio. So you're doing really well there. But it's such a unique experience, and that's been, and enrollment's been good. So and that is just one, because then you have,
Well, enrollment's been good. We're adding a third day.
well, that's fantastic. And how does that, and that goes for, is it one semester, a half a year, or how?
It's a whole year.
A whole year. Okay,
Yep.
it's a whole
and we're
year.
enrolling right now. In
Wow.
fact, tonight's Parents' Day. By the time this
Okay.
airs, it'll be over. But
No,
we're
I'll
still,
get it on right away.
Yeah, but we're accepting applications, and we would love to have more people join us.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Because we talked about all your summer camps too. I mean, there's all these different iterations. And in the current cover story, we talked about the summer months and how the zoo continues its mission through all of these different types of camps. And you had art and nature, zoo doctor, creepy, crawly, and cool, nature detectives, and all of them were tailored to specific grade level. Does that change
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It changes every year, and we try to make it fun. Like the detectives, we'll have detective
I can just
stories. We'll have a
yes.
water version, but the vet, doctor,
Yeah.
our vet came every day and worked with them, and she got, I think, as much out of it as they did.
That's amazing. I was up at the Spur campus,
Yeah.
where they have the vets doing the open. It's like a theater where they actually do all of the animal, operations and everything. I mean, once you're in that moment, and like at these, whether it's at camp or it's at one of the longer term sessions, there's a whole pathway there.
Yep.
For a lot of these kids, and that may be exactly where. I mean, that's what happens.
Well, and we host interns from both of our colleges, CSU and PCC. Also, Pikes Peak has a zookeeping program, and we hire interns, and a lot of them end up being hired as our zookeepers.
That's great.
So there's a complete path there.
Right. And that's unique too, because if you're from the community and you actually have a destination where you can actually continue to work in that field, grow and develop.
And one of the great things about the internships that we've heard is because we're small, there are advantages of being a small zoo. A lot of times the large zoos, they have things that they offer that we can't offer, but you get lost in that sometimes. So the advantage of a small zoo is, especially with the zookeepers, they get to get hands-on many different, some of them will get sequestered in maybe cats or reptiles in another zoo. At the Pueblo Zoo, you get the whole gamut of experience because we need you in all those
Right.
places.
I mean, it's like Noah and the Ark just arrived, and you need to be
Yeah, we
able to
need
take care of
everybody.
all
Yes,
of the
yes.
animals. But I just love the themes. I think those are great. And one of the things here in the article, we talked about one camper's favorite moment was feeding the penguins. When we put together this story and I saw this photo, I kept looking at it. I'm going, this is at the Pueblo Zoo.
It's
I mean, again,
spectacular.
it looks like you're at this huge, national, like aquarium.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I mean, I haven't gone in like 15 years because it was one of the first things that I did when I first got to Pueblo.
Well,
and now that I go back, there's so many places I could just spend the day.
We've had other zoos come and take a look at this, and we actually have a great breeding. We are very good at breeding, and we've had other zoos come and learn from us.
It's great. You should partner with Solaros and their granitas so that you go into the aquarium to see the penguins and you get those really good, icy, smooth granitas.
Well, Solaros is a great partner for us.
Yes, yeah. No, they're those granitas, you can order them off the menu with all these special things, and it's the best smoothie in town. But what are some of the other things that people should be aware of if they're thinking about for themselves or for their family, or if one of their kids says, is there a class at the zoo? I heard about, because kids talk to kids, and all of a sudden when Billy and Bobby are going to the zoo, it's like, well, they're the cool kids, so we need to go to the zoo too. There's so many different ways in which kids share, because you got to meet kids, as you said, where they are. And if you are there and you're meeting them, but you really aren't there for them, that's a disconnect and that's a disservice.
Well, we have the educational programs, formal and informal. Zoo school's a great place to enroll. Also the summer camps, and we do have some scholarship opportunities.
Okay.
And then there's the family aspect. Come as a member. We have a lot of people that come either with the children before they enter school. They'll come every week and spend time. And families.
Is that like yoga and a goat, or what's the thing you do with?
Well, a lot of mommies group will come together, and they love to walk together.
Yeah,
and they also.
I noticed that when I was there last, they were all meeting out in front, and then they were on their way.
And we've got iced coffees and things like that. They can let the kids play, and we've got some things coming up, and we'll do another podcast about our new nature play area that's coming out. But then also events. People can attend events.
You can host an event there too if you wanted
to
host
host
event.
your birthday party there. You can host your wedding. You can host your corporate party. Parkview has their party there every year, and a couple thousand people come. And we also have engagements that happen there.
Oh, do you let them go into a special part of the zoo
do
and they make their moment?
They do. They do. We've had a couple of those.
Wow.
And they come back every year.
Well, that's a good way to get them to come back, because that's where it all started.
And electricators, speaking of coming back over the years,
oh my gosh,
families have measured their kids' growth by putting them next to the installations, walking through the whale, etc.
Yeah.
So people come back to that every year. We've got Zubu coming up. We've got
you literally have
coming
something every. So what is your biggest, like if you were to look at your year and you were planning, you really wanted to support like the big fundraiser of the year, what would be some of the opportunities?
It depends on who you are, because if you've got kids, Zubu might be right for you. If you want a great place, a safe place to really have fun and go trick-or-treating. If you want to come to our Zoofari, that's our kind of like our version of a gala, but it's outside. It's like an upscale party, outside party during the summer with silent auction, etc. If you like beer, we have brew at the zoo.
Yeah.
And that's also, that we wanted to do that because brews are so popular right now and put such a part of Colorado culture. But it also highlights that zoos are not just for kids.
Right.
You can come as an adult. I have board members that joined because it was a solace for them. They had no kids in their life, but they came and it was a peaceful place for them. So
they could feel like they were with the kids, but they didn't have to take them home.
Well, some people really like to come without the kids because they're not being pulled around.
Yeah, because it's a completely different agenda.
It really is.
You don't get to do what you want to do. You got to leave the kids somewhere else.
And we've got senior week.
Well,
coming
that's what I
up.
was going to say, because there's all different levels of experience of entry. So you mentioned on the sheet here the impact. So here's what you can do. And it says attend. When was the last time you were at the zoo? And like we were saying, some it may have been just in elementary school when or junior high school when they did their field trip. Others may be more recent. Become a member. Talk about that. What kind of memberships are there? We mentioned individual, we mentioned business, corporate. There's a lot of different areas where you could support just by supporting the traditional way.
Right. And we have several different varieties. There's family, there's 2 adult memberships, there's senior memberships, there's military memberships, and there's all kinds of things that you can do to be tailored to your needs and your family or you as an individual. And I just wanted to point out that there are some people that are saying, I would love to support the zoo in a little bit more significant way.
Right.
And we're coming out with we're just now launching it, the Champion Circle.
I was going to say, what is the Champion?
The Champion
Circle. Are there like equestrian horse, the winners in that kind of a circle?
Not really. We're not going to put you through your paces, but what that is an opportunity for you. It's for those that can give a little bit more. So there's different, it's a higher level price, but you also get some,
and these are champion people.
You are helping the zoo be sustained into the future. And as a thank you, there are some benefits involved with that.
Right.
There's a behind the scene that comes with that. There's some guest passes that you can use and give to friends or family. So it's a way for those that have the means can give more. They get some fun little benefits. But really, I've had some people say, I would pay more for a membership if I knew that it was helping the zoo. This is your chance.
And what if you have a family that's planning their estate and they want to give something to the zoo? Because there you're dealing with endowments, you're dealing with long term. What other vehicles, shall we say, that you could help the zoo with?
Yes, we would love for people to think of the zoo when they're doing their legacy planning. If you have a financial planner or someone you're working with, they can help you with that. We also have a free service on our website called Free Will. You can create your own will for free and choose the Pueblo Zoo or not as a designee. We're not requiring it, but that's also something if you wanted a free will
out of that whole process.
Right. And any of those, there's a lot of different mechanisms.
Right.
It's put us in your will that you can give stock,
Used
you can give your
There's
car,
so many
you can
ways,
give your donor advised funds, and we'd love to help you with that.
And the other thing too is every donation counts.
Yep.
Whether it's $1, it's $1,000, it's $10,000. Has the zoo ever had like a major endowment or a major underwrite? Some zoos or museums, some they do it for a year. They pay all the admissions for a year, and it's free for everyone.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways that can happen.
We're working towards that.
Okay.
An endowment is the dream, right?
Well,
because then you live off the interest.
Right.
So, yes, the endowment is definitely somewhere we would like to go.
I mean, that is something I've seen a lot with zoos because, again, it's legacy. It is historical. So you have people who, for generations, have been in a community that's always supported. And what a great way if if you're gone, wouldn't it be wonderful to know that your earnings, your family wealth is being multiplied, in the future and doing all the good work, that you're doing.
And the current, that's exactly right. And then the more immediate, also corporations. We have a lot of sponsorships.
Because I've noticed you flags up with all of these names. How do you get a flag?
Well, and there is a threshold there.
I love
exactly.
the flag.
And we like to reward the people that are really back over and meet a certain amount. But we like to work with our corporations they get value out of this too. A lot of eyeballs on their name, being considered a partner. We've got some that sponsor events, some that sponsor an exhibit, some that just give a donation, some that hold their corporate event there. There's all kinds of ways. And we're happy to talk to people depending on what your need. It's a great marketing benefit.
Especially at the parking lot, because you could drive into the parking lot, you park, you see all of and then you leave and you see those names again. It's just a reinforcement that these local businesses, these companies support the zoo.
And we've got a lot of our Zunity partners that
Zunity is another one.
Yeah.
What's Zunity? Because
Zunity.
Again, you've got so many. I mean, you have a whole vocabulary of where you need a glossary somewhere so people understand what you're doing.
Well, Zunity is something I think we've lived for the 90 years that we've been open, but we've just coined the term recently. Because it's the zoo and community.
Right.
It's our symbiotic relationship of how we give to the community and the community gives to us.
Yeah.
We're supportive. It's just like a natural cycle. We support each other. And so Zunity is what we're after.
I like
and
that.
Some of our partners, for example, we're finding all kinds of creative ways. It's hard for nonprofits and for corporations right now.
Right.
And the more we can help each other, it lifts both of us up.
Yeah.
PDI, for example, they're a partner. We contract with them for our custodial services.
Okay, sure.
And because that's part of their mission. Their mission is give meaningful work and dignified work. And so they've been working there. And they've had their events here. We've had a lot of other organizations, Minnequa Works, Pueblo Electrics, Black Hills,
Right.
T-Fiber. They all, at Parkview, there's a lot of different ways that they all give. Some of them like to have their employees there at an event. Some of them will bring, PY brought a group to volunteer, and they painted some stuff for us. So there's a lot of XL has a volunteer program where their employees are paid, and they will come out and they build things for us. They've got skills.
I love that part when companies, if you're going to be doing community service, for example, on behalf of the company at the zoo or a nonprofit, some of these companies will sometimes double their salary during that time, which is then also it's an incentive and a give back too.
They've rebuilt.
I love that whole flipping that paradigm is just so great, because giving back to the community and their company actually honoring that and then multiplying that is such a powerful statement.
Right. And I'm sorry if I missed anyone. Golden Gate Manor, all these different places have been helping us for years, and some of them are new. But we're finding even more creative ways to partner together.
Right. So, next we've got, we talked about the legacy planning, but this flyer is really helpful.
Thank you.
Because on the education front, you serve more than 10,000 students every year. You talked about the economic impact, which is over 20 million in economic impact. And culturally and historically, artistically, for 90 years, we've been enriching lives. And you were saying, because I'm fascinated by how it actually came to be, City Park, and all of the installations and all of the architecture and design. But you said you're going to be doing something behind the scenes in the future on the history. Is that a future programming that we can look forward to? Because that's where sometimes it's hard to find. There are a few places on the website and on the internet and the government documents and all that. But it's really fascinating when first of all, the WPA, during the Depression, how all of these creative people were given employment by the gifts that they had naturally. And we look at a lot of them. Sadly, it's now over almost 100 years now in many cases. But that was a big deal. I mean, it was it was what kept people employed and from going, under in many cases. And look at the legacy that we're left with.
Well, let me back up to the words that you said, behind the scenes. We call them BTS. And behind the scenes are things that we offer now. For example, you can go to our website and purchase a panda behind the scenes, a bison. You can feed a bison. You can go to the African dogs and the African crested porcupines and meet them. So we got to do
challenges here. We got to get families to challenge other families to go and do this.
So, and the penguins, and you can go and
this is great. I forgot about I always forget. Then when I saw that picture, it was like, oh my gosh, penguins are one of my favorites.
They're one of our favorite exhibits, but they're expensive to keep.
Well, they need TLC and they need certain requirements. I was going to say they've got their water slides and the water, and it has to be a win-win for everyone.
But what you were talking about is a new offering that we're looking at behind the scenes. We have a lot of the animal ones, but we are looking at developing this history behind the scenes, and we're also looking at a curator tour. So our animals are. Curator is the person that is in charge, the director of animal care. We've actually changed that title recently to the director of animal care. And she's going to be doing tours. And that gives you really the inside scoop.
Yeah, you think what vets are doing, and then all of a sudden you're just like, wow.
Right. Well, we just recently had our camp out in August. We have one annually. And one of the favorite parts of that is people come and they stay overnight, and they really love the tour that they get to take with the keepers, because the keepers are the rock stars. They know the inside scoop.
God. They can tell you all the stories and they know everything.
And there's a lot of drama in the penguins, for example. There's a lot of drama.
Well, they deserve it. I mean, penguins are awesome, but that creates a little bit of drama too.
It's like Meerkat Manor. There's a lot there.
When I went to the Galapagos the very first time, I had to step back, and when I got off the first Zodiac and I was on one of the islands, and these birds just come walking up to me like I'm in It's a Small World or some Disney, and I was waiting for Walt Disney to actually come out of the the background. But it is amazing when you start to see those moments where animals are just being themselves, they're just doing their thing with their buddies or whatever. And that interaction, how we interact, because there are some animals that are a little bit more fun and energetic, and they're iconic, they're celebrities in the animal kingdom. When you look at the Pueblo Zoo, what is the most, I guess it could shift. What's the most popular attraction, the most popular animal? I hate to identify the most popular.
That's like asking a mom who her favorite child is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
But what you're getting at also is we use the word charismatic animals and exotic, and that's really what you kind of think of exotics.
Okay.
And that's one of the things I talked about in my presentation, that, the most popular ones are the lions, the zebras, the otters, the penguins. And those are the ones that are the most expensive. They're also the ones that we're able to keep because we're part of the AZA.
I was going to say because of your accreditation.
Yeah, because we have partnerships with, and that's a whole nother podcast again about how
that's expensive. You got to maintain all that stuff.
Well, and it's also we need to ensure genetic diversity, and that we're keeping the zoos they're able to take care of them. Anyways,
right.
So, but then there's the non-charismatic, and people ask me what is my favorite. The simple, predictable answer is I'm a Leo. I love the lions.
Sure.
I also was born in the year of the monkey. I love the monkeys.
Yeah.
But what I was surprised about, and people wouldn't be surprised at that, right? Because who couldn't just sit and watch a lion for a long time?
Right.
But what I'm surprised at is the things that we don't think about. Two of my favorite animals that I never expected is the armadillo.
Oh my gosh.
Summer is outside my office, and you can watch them every day.
Right.
I watch her make and remake her bed every day. The North American porcupines, who are native here in our backyards,
and they're so
fascinating.
Yeah, they're fascinating.
And I love those.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of things that you discover. A lot of other people from big zoos, staff from other big zoos have come and said, I really love the way you highlight these and that people really notice them.
Right.
We discover them because you have the space here at the Pueblo Zoo to really see that.
It's like a really good choir, that's built right. You've got all these voices, and some of them only give you one note, in a 30-minute presentation. But without them, it's not the same. I love that, because that's kind of what the zoo, when you go to the zoo, it's all because you don't know who's going to be performing. They may have been having a bad day, So it really is like going to the opera. Hopefully it's not a tragedy, but most are tragedies. But that whole notion of this curated kind of experiential, moment with, our equivalents in the animal kingdom, basically. But they all have personalities. They arrive somehow. You were just telling us about these new bats.
Yeah.
When you get excited about bats, that's a big deal.
A lot of people used to just walk by that. But now they are the star of the show because they're active and they're around it.
And they're babies. Everyone loves babies at a zoo. So tell me about, it's a discovery room, right? Yeah. So that's another thing. Again, it's that up close where you can actually, be in that moment within how does that work?
Well, that's also gone through a transformation. A lot of people may have, when it came out, decades ago, Butch White helped fund that and really got that off the ground. It was really groundbreaking at the time. It was a lot of interactive things. It was a lot of information. It was toys and things like that. And as time goes on, those things age. So we decided we wanted to refurbish that. COVID actually kind of pushed us over the edge on that. We closed it then. And what we did was, a lot of these animals go out to the classrooms, and we would keep a lot of those animals in the animal care room, which was not open to the public.
Right.
That's a very small space.
And we're talking about what? Snakes and reptiles?
Snakes and reptiles and tortoises and birds and
the tortoises. I love tortoises.
And the ferrets and the chinchillas. So all those things that go out, but they were in a very small space, and as standards and practices evolve, we want to give those more space.
Yeah.
So we did two things to the refurbishment accomplished a couple things. They made them more visible to people, and they gave them bigger spaces.
Right.
And we've created some spaces where we have like a playpen, if you will.
Yeah, I love
and
the
they
way
can
you did
come and
that,
put
yeah.
so while the keepers are doing their daily duties and cleaning, etc., they'll put out a couple animals and they can talk to people. We've got some fabulous education keepers that will talk to people while they're caring for them, with the animals, and the kids can ask questions. What do they eat? Where do they come from?
See, and
all
I
of those
love
things.
all of that because, well, the United Nations started and it's really taken off. I would love to get one here at our library, but it's the human library. So you can check out a person. So if you can check out an accountant or an opera singer and you get to check them out for like 20 minutes and you sit down with them and you talk about your lives. It was designed. Yeah, it's amazing. I think it was in Europe where they started the first, but it was so powerful because it was one way for people who would never otherwise talk to each other.
Right.
They actually came together and realized they had more in common than they had different. And I love the fact that you have these discovery rooms.
And you don't have to check them out. You just
No,
talk
you
to
just
them
go
while they're
there right there. And
Well, that and things like the birthday parties and the
Right.
programs that you book, we have the option to book a presentation, and one of our docents will talk to you, and they'll get to up close.
So if someone wants to have a special event there, because I know it's a great place, how does that actually work? Do you have a team that actually will, take your event and then they'll tell you what you can and can't do? And I mean, what about food and food and beverages and stuff like that? How does that work?
We're kind of the in between both. You
Okay.
can do a lot of it on your own because some people like to do that.
And we got such great
And then
caterers and people in town that could do that.
And we'll allow that.
Okay.
And then we'll take care of some of it for you. There's different things you can add on.
Okay.
So basically, we have the place, and somebody just mentioned this to me. It was fabulous because we arrived and everything was ready. The tablecloths were ready, etc., and the decorations. And then people can decide to book a program or not book a program.
Right.
Depends on what your needs are.
Sure.
If you've got an agenda and you just want a space,
Right.
that's fine. And you want people. The cool thing is you attend. Admission to the zoo is part of your
Right, which
your
makes
thing.
sense.
So
It
you can
opens
do
that
your
all
party
up.
and then you can
Yeah.
go walk around
And give people the freedom to choose or see things as they wish.
Right.
Because sometimes family parties or company parties can be very much stick to an agenda
Right.
or there's a program. But God, it's so nice when they realize, oh my God, I can go out and explore. And when can they do that?
We'll
Is
have
that
people-
any day of the week? At what times? How late can you be at the zoo?
Well, mostly they're during the day. We do have
Okay.
some night rentals, but there's a surcharge because of the
But
extra.
Can you do things when the zoo is closed after hours and pay a bigger surcharge?
We're working
I'm talking
on that.
about major donors who need to come and support
Well, we
the
do
zoo.
have some of those. We
Okay.
can arrange it, and yeah, we have had after hours
that would be
rentals
cool.
as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be
Yes,
great.
and we're looking at some things this year. We would like to have a few more evenings. We've experimented with other things. We've
Yeah.
had concerts at the
Yeah.
park. We've had the movies at the zoo. We've had. Evening nights, and we're doing more of
You
that.
should do
So
an
keep an
event where
eye.
you put people in cages, certain people.
Well,
And you
stay
could have
tuned. There's some things that we're working on that.
No, I think it would be fun because it flips the lens, and all of a sudden, they're looking at us and we're looking at them. But well, no, I'm really excited that we were able to share this story in the current issue of the Pueblo Star Journal, and I mean, you and your team and your tireless work, and of course with your annual report now, and now we have a call to action where we can actually, participate in your regular programming. We can also look at the zoo as a destination, a place for our own special events. So if it's a birthday, an anniversary, if it's, a wedding, I mean, you can pretty much decide for yourself what you'd like to do, at the zoo. Plus, the zoo is in City Park, so there's so many other amenities. If you really wanted to make it a Pueblo experience, you could start in the morning. You could do things. What food? So food at the zoo. What do you have as far as food at the zoo?
The food is kind of seasonal because we do rely on high school kids to run the
Sure,
cafe.
sure. Yeah.
So as you know, that kind of is
Right.
But we do have a cafe, and we also
So you
have
don't have to bring. You can actually arrive, and there will be something you can have to eat and drink if you're at the zoo.
But one of the things also is you can bring your own picnic.
Well, that's
for
great.
some
So
people,
you can
that's
bring
affordable.
that's a picnic. Well, you have such great grounds for that too.
exactly.
So there are places where people can go and sit down and have a picnic.
Yep, and we have
outdoors.
concessions, and we now have adult beverages.
Oh, you have adult beverages.
We have, we have our license.
That's
and-
great. That's a
and
good revenue stream too.
We're very responsible about it, but but
You have to be.
It
You're
is
at the
very
zoo.
yes.
You have to be responsible. Those animals are too important, and
But
they're all
it is-
laughing at us.
But it is something that people like to do sometimes.
Right.
Is just relax at the
Well,
relaxing day
you
at the
love
zoo.
to have a beer and you're just looking at bison or
That's
looking
right.
at some animal that you would never have the opportunity, because they don't have those at bars. You know, here you could really go to the zoo and have your beer with some, wild animal that's
Right.
out at the zoo.
Right.
That's a story to talk about.
Yep. And one of the things that you mentioned about our presentation,
Right.
I encourage people that there's all kinds of entry levels. And what we mentioned is we're trying to be transparent about where we are, because
Right.
we want to make sure that people realize before it's too late that we can't take the zoo for granted.
Right.
But it also doesn't take. Could take just a little from everybody.
Right.
I mean, if everybody in Pueblo gave $1,
Because that's what I was going to say. So how can,
But, yeah.
because I know people love to see, they love to check in when they see that, a church or a fundraiser, a school or the zoo is trying to earn, funds specifically tied into their budget and their mission. But are there ways, how will we be able to know that we don't have to worry anymore? Because we really do want to see the zoo forever. We don't want to have these lingering fears that we're not going to have Zoonity or we're not going to have the zoo school.
Right. Well, and that's what we're trying to get to a
Okay.
point where we're much more financially stable. And we've made lots of progress on that. Our events have really brought in a lot of revenue, and the fundraising has brought in a lot of revenue. But inflation also has gone up. Wages have also gone up. So we've been able to keep up because of that success.
Right.
But without that success, we would have been
Costs
closed.
now are
Yeah.
outrageous. I mean, we're starting a new column in the next issue called Brie on a Budget.
Yeah.
Because one of our writers is a master at, when you basically stack or you find all this additional value in ways in which you can cut back or conserve. But no costs. I mean, costs affect everyone because you're not just, a zoo isn't free of all those other expenses.
Well, you can't. We learned in COVID, you can't just close the door like a restaurant
No,
or a
you
museum. We have to
cannot.
keep continuing care for the animals.
Yes. Because you're a first responder. Were you classified as first responders, the zoo, in terms of the nature?
As far as the people that had to show up. Yes, they were essential personnel.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really, really great.
Yeah.
So what about...
what you were saying
Yeah.
about how do we know if we're making progress and how do we know that we don't have to worry? But you were mentioning endowments.
That's where I want to really end this, because...
Our goal
yeah.
is to get to that point where we're not just chasing after what we need today
Right.
to keep the doors open, but we're building it up. And we are lucky that we have some reserves right now, because that wasn't
Right.
the case when I started. We were in deficit when I started, and we were able to get some reserves, and that's what's going to carry us in these next couple years.
Right.
Obviously, we don't want to dip into those. We want to keep building those.
No, that's
reserves
always
because
nice to
that's-
know that it's there and available.
Well, and
'cause
it's
you
not
never-
just nice to know. We are actually required to do that through our accreditation, because what they're looking for is stability, because you can't just close a zoo. You have
and
to
what
care
happens
for
if
them.
an animal has a major medical condition?
So they want you to
That's
be
gonna be
stable.
expensive,
So
yeah.
those reserves are
Okay.
really important, and we're
Right.
going to have to dip into those in the next couple of years if this trend continues. So what we're trying to do is keep from doing that, and could keep our reserves and keep the doors open and keep
Right.
our animals fed.
So if we were really targeting him, and of course this is multifaceted because there's so many different ways that you could give. But on this note of endowments, because I know the call's going to go out now, what are we talking about? I mean, is this like, it's hard. I mean, are we talking $50,000, $1 million? There's so many different ways that endowments can work. And we know we have very giving members of our community who are looking for ways in which that they can make a difference. So that's something they could call you.
Oh, those big endowments are sometimes
just bring your
combinations
checkbook
of
or
several.
your credit card, and we'll come up with some good terms.
Yeah, and if that dumps into our lap, that's fantastic.
I would hope to see, that just, to me, that seems a real natural fit. When I've been to other zoos, you can actually see the legacy planning that has come through. I mean, some families, it's a really, really big deal because the zoo is a really big deal in their community, and that is important. So, and I think you're no different, but I do think that that's an area that we could push that call to action, and hopefully I think we've got some. I'm thinking of names right now myself because I can see some
Oh, then
that
pass them
aren't.
over.
No, I'm gonna. I'm gonna, we'll have some conversations, but I think the emphasis is letting them know, though. Again, it's not all about animals. It's about our community. It's about, well, like the title, you know, that we're trying to build, create future leaders, and that's only going to happen. Like you said, you have these kids that can't really talk to people so much, but man, you get them talking about these animals, and they're like masters of the knowledge.
And caring for animals, you know, we have a big vet set shortage, right?
Terrible. So we have huge covers. That is a big problem, and that has not gotten any better. And sometimes you can't even get a vet if you get a new dog or cat. And that's terrifying.
What we're doing is trying to inspire kids to get into that field and give them a path.
So important. So on so many different levels. I've seen that. My sister and my niece went to San Diego State University, where they have that really close program with like all of the different the wild animal park with all those different research areas. Because a lot of the kids want to go, and many of them think, you know, it's going to be really fun and exciting to go and train these killer whales and do all this stuff. And then they're like, what? You know,
but scoop and poop here.
Yeah, but it's part of that whole experiential, that education, that kind of internship and training directly with the facility. You know, like the zoo, because the zoo is a beautiful place for those individuals that really want to use some of those sciences. You know, because you have zoology, every part of that, because you created in the zoo this little universe where, you know, you guys you have so many different places where people can find that interest that will spark something, hopefully.
Well, and that's what I want to go back to when you were saying about the endowment. A big gift would be amazing, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a place for everybody at the zoo.
That's so true.
Whether you're visiting, whether you're giving, a lot of people will come and just come and get to know us. Just start with
that man in Colorado Springs. I mean, that was a call to action, and he just, I got to do this. I love that story.
And also, we've had people that come and they say, wow, I didn't know you were doing this, and they came back with a check. Just because whether you do or don't.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Sometimes that's a whole other story about where do they get the information, you know?
Well, I think what it is the first step is to engage.
Right.
Come and see us, and really, and then you'll find your place on how you want to be involved.
Right.
Whether that's having your birthday party there.
Invest in yourself, you know, and really come and see. Because, like you said, you're going to be creating some new programs that haven't been offered, you know, that are going to be extending that experience further. And I know there's a lot of information about the zoo, and you're pulling out books now from some of your previous directors, you know, with all this news and information. Because that's what we do in Pueblo. We go back 90 years, we go back 100 years, 150 years. Some families go back 400 years. You know, this was a place where, you know, France, Spain, Mexico, Republic of Texas. I mean, it's been a borderlands. It's been a crossing of so many different ways. And the zoo is just another one of those beautiful ways for a community to say, you know, we are a community. We have a zoo. Yeah, zoonity. I love that word. Well, any other information you want to share with our listeners? This has been really great.
I think we've covered a lot. I could talk forever, but I think your listeners probably need to
I love the fact, too, that, you know, you do a lot with a very small budget.
Thank you.
And that's really, really hard to do.
And I want to give credit to the team for that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of dedicated people. None of them are there because they're making money.
Right.
They're there because they love the zoo, they love what it stands for, and they love each other and the animals.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that. And I want to do a shout out for them.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And we're just so lucky that we have a zoo in our community, because a lot of places do not have a zoo. And so it's a treasure and a gem. If you have not been out to the zoo, what are the hours of operation? When are you open just for regular admission?
In September, we're going to our fall hours, so we'll be open from 9 to 4. And the last entry is 3 because we want people to have time.
Sure.
The rest of the year, we're open till 5, but we're going into 9 to 4. And we're open every day.
Oh, you're 7 days.
7 days a week.
Wow.
Yep, we only close 3 days a year. Christmas, New Year's, and Thanksgiving.
Wow. What happens to the animals on those days? They get a
the
holiday?
keepers come in. They do. They actually kind of like
it. On a holiday.
They get special treats.
Thank you so much, Abbie, for coming in today. And if you have not read the article yet, it's also online, so you can pick up the latest edition of the Pueblo Star Journal. We have 42 pickup locations throughout Pueblo and just a little bit further south in Huerfano County. But you can get it a print digital. We've got some things that are happening on social media to give you some further storylines. But this podcast is supported by the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. So we give a shout out to them because they have supported this podcast, The Voices of Pueblo, for the remainder of the year. So they made a big give to honor this podcast, and we're very grateful for their generous support. So thank you again, Abbie.
Thank you, Gregory. Thanks for having me.
Everyone, go to the zoo. Thank you so much.
It's all happening at the zoo.
It is. It's all happening at the zoo, and it's right in City Park. It's one of our great gems here in Pueblo, Colorado.
Thanks, Gregory.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Voices of Pueblo podcast.